Hello, welcome to the Let's Talk Kids Health Live Show, episode 57. As you know, I'm Dr. Nerissa Bauer, your host. I'm a behavioral pediatrician and CEO of Let's Talk Kids Health. The concept of this show is to share information about behavioral health, parenting, and family wellness. Each week, I plan to bring you topics and guests to help me advance this mission so that we can all talk together. Now, as you know, we just let us know that you're here by commenting, asking questions, and liking at any time. And in a little bit, your questions may be asked to my guest. Now, the replay will be immediately available after the broadcast. Please share this episode with anyone you think who would benefit. Now, if you don't want to miss future episodes or maybe check out the past ones, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, NerissaBauerMD, and follow my blog Facebook page, Let's Talk Kids Health, and join my free parenting discussion group. So today's topic is Taming the Triggers in Complex Families with Elaine Taylor-Klaus. Author, parent educator, and certified coach, Elaine co-created ImpactParents.com and the Sanity School Behavior Therapy Training Program. The author of The Essential Guide to Raising Complex Kids with ADHD, Anxiety, and More, as well as Parenting ADHD Now, she provides training, coaching, and support worldwide, empowering parents and couples to guide their children, teens, and young adults to become independent and successful. Elaine, welcome to the show. It's been so great to see you again.
Thank you. It's really good to see you too.
Yeah, I
It's
can't
hard to
believe
believe it's been so long.
I know it's been like exactly a year since we've read your book. And so I just remember the reception. Everybody absolutely loved that book. It is still a book that I highly recommend to all of my patients. So again, I just love the work that you're
Thank you.
doing.
I really appreciate that. I'm honored by that.
Yeah, well, so, I just to make sure that everybody understands what we're talking about before we get into the subject, do you mind just defining what you mean by complex kids?
You know, I define complex kids as kids who struggle with some aspects of life or learning.
Hmm.
But I think I also will say to parents, if you don't know what I'm talking about, then you probably don't have a complex kid. And if you do know what I'm talking about, you know exactly what I mean when I say complex kid,
Yes.
right? So
That's
there's
right.
a definition and then there's an experience.
Yes, yes. And I know that this topic, I mean, when you and I sort of, kind of had some email exchange and I heard that this was going to be the topic that you wanted to talk about, I'm like, okay, I know that this is going to be a great episode because this is, just a common parent experience. The
Yeah.
triggers of, kind of interacting with children and just knowing how to handle that.
Yeah.
And especially, as you said, complex kids can make things more complex, just by
Yep.
nature. They keep us on our toes. So I guess I'm going to start off by asking you this key question. I mean, why do you think it's so important to empower our complex kids?
There's a million answers to this question, right?
Mhm.
But here's what's coming up for me in this moment today. Um, our complex kids, our kids are the innovators of tomorrow. They are bright, and yes, they're quirky, but they're bright and capable and nuanced, and they have these incredible gifts. And being quirky in a complex world makes a lot of our time we spend these kids feel directed and redirected and wrong and mistaken, and so we're not playing to their gifts, we're playing to their challenges, and so they begin to not see how incredible they are. So I
Mhm.
think it's really super important to empower them because they do have such capacity, and it's really easy to miss that with all of the complexities that they come with. And yet it's playing to their strengths that really sets them up for a lifetime of success and is really what will allow them to be the incredible leaders and innovators that they are destined to be tomorrow.
Yeah. I mean, and that is, I love how you just said that. And I think all parents see the goodness in their children. It's just
Yeah.
sometimes their behavior and what we experience can be kind of very different from that. And,
Yeah.
or we're just like, why are you holding yourself back? You can definitely do this. And, I think parents experience their children in lots of different ways, but in the end, they just want to help elevate them. And yet
Yeah.
sometimes don't really know how to do that.
Very often. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess but the second question is, like, well, what do you want for parents of complex kiddos? Like if they're in this situation, how? How can
Well, I
we
think what I
help them?
want is for them to see what's possible, to
Yeah.
see the gift that these incredible kids bring,
Hmm.
and not to focus so much on the problems, but to really address the problems by focusing on the gifts and the strengths. And I know for me, I really struggled with this the first 10 years of my life as a parent. I had 3 complex kids under the age of 8 or whatever, and I was neurotic, and, and I needed them. I was so attached to them hitting certain milestones that I wasn't really allowing myself to be present to who they were and what they were going through, and they needed to develop at a different level or at a different pace. And I
Hmm.
needed to shift, trying to make sure they did what their peers did and their cousins did. And and I needed to let go of all of that and say, okay, who is this kid in front of me and what does this kid need? And when I began to learn to do that, and I had to learn to do that, right? So letting go, parenting is a daily exercise in letting go.
Hmm.
Right? I mean,
Yes.
and that is the understatement of the year. And so I had to learn to shift, to let go of, I'm going to say this and it sounds weird, but I had to let go of the vision I had for them. Not lowering the bar, but letting go of what I thought it was going to look like to have these kids and to be a mom and all of that, in order to meet them where they were and be the mom they needed me to be. But that meant letting go of all of those notions I had to start with and creating a new vision based on who the child actually was, not what my fantasy was when I was pregnant.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And it sounds again so simple, but
Oh, it's not
it's
simple.
not simple. It's so not
Well, it's
simple.
simple, but it's not easy. How
Yeah.
about that?
Okay. Yeah. Let's talk about that. Can you
Yeah,
unpack that a little bit more in terms of, I mean, intuitively parents get that, but
yes.
how do you go about sort of letting go in that moment
Yeah.
or when you're worried that like people around you are judging?
Right. Well, so you're speaking to a couple of different pieces. When we teach about it at Impact, we break it all down into much smaller components to make it manageable and digestible. And so
Yeah.
part of what you're talking about is the notion of what we call shifting expectations,
Hmm.
right? And it really is about, not, as I say, it's not lowering the bar. It's just kind of saying, where does this kid need the bar to be right now? And I can still hold a vision for a lifetime of success and accomplishment and happiness and fulfillment and all of that stuff, and say, well, right now they may be having trouble using scissors or learning to read or making friends, and so I need to embrace that challenge and support them in it without pathologizing it and making it a crisis and making everything a crisis.
Hmm.
And I think when we hold the bar so high, too high for some of our kids, we make it impossible for them to ever reach it to the point where they just give up trying.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
So,
know,
do you think that kids intuitively, like if they just know where that, where you are coming from, like when you're interacting with them?
I think kids are sponges.
Yeah.
I think they know everything. They feel. I was reading this article this week on some social media. And it was really good. It was somebody talking about grief, um, and it was a funeral home person talking about how do you prepare your children to come to a funeral, and talking about what happens to infants and toddlers in
Mm.
that environment, because they feel everything. 90% of communication is nonverbal, and that doesn't stop when kids become verbal.
Mhm.
That's there across the board. So when we're worried, yeah, our kids get it.
Mhm. Yeah.
When we're concerned, when we're stressed, when we're anxious, our kids get it.
Mhm.
And we don't have to be saying it for them to feel it. I know that was the experience particularly with my eldest kid.
Mhm. And you mentioned that, you have 3
Mm,
complex kids. I mean, I can only imagine, like, if one is here, one is here, like, how did you sort of figure that out with
wow.
I mean,
So
what
many,
it's
so many.
so
Um, In a lot of different ways. I mean, part of what happens, I was talking to my kids about this over the winter break this year, is that, my eldest was talking about the parents that they had, and then the parents that their siblings had, the next sibling and the next one. And so we had this conversation about, well, the parents you had became the parents the next kid had and became the parents the next.
Right.
So you had all of them, just not at the same time. And I can look at my kids and the difference between my eldest and my youngest in terms of who their self-concept and how they've embraced accepting themselves is very, very different. And I think it has everything to do with who I became as a parent and how I shifted as a parent. And as I became a coach, my husband and I both. So I think that it's such a narrow thread here.
Yes.
We don't cause it, right?
Right.
But we can exacerbate it or we can improve it. And by how we be. And so who we are as a parent really matters because we set the tone for the home. And if we're freaked out, that's the tone we're going to set. And if we're kind of calm and flowing with it and allowing things to unfold, that's the tone we're going to set. And so, there were a lot of things I did. At first, I tried to control it. And as I stopped trying to control it and started learning to respond to it, that's when I began to focus on me and the role that I was playing. And that's what really made the biggest shift.
Yeah. No, thank you for being so open and sharing your personal experience. I think, when parents, come to folks like us, for help or guidance, I mean, I think, for families living it, it feels so hard because they only see their experience. But I think hearing that other people, even people who teach this, it's just part of what happens. It's a universal experience. I mean, nothing about parenthood is ever easy.
Especially with complex kids.
Yes, with
Well,
that.
two things come up as you say that. One was I had the privilege in early 2022 of speaking at the APSARD conference. And, most people don't know, but APSARD is kind of the medical conference for the realm of ADHD and autism and related disorders. And it's very rare for a coach to get to speak there. So it was quite an honor. And as I was doing the research to prepare, because I was speaking with Tom Brown, what became really clear to me was that parents are an untapped resource by the medical community. And that the role we play is essential, not only in supporting our kids, 90% of the time, but in being the reporters to the providers. Like they need to hear us talk about what's going on and really understand it. And when we are in community with other parents, when we're connecting with other parents and seeing that we're not alone, that's when we become the best reporters. That's when we really begin to collaborate with our providers and help them create a treatment plan for our kids, because we're no longer operating in a silo thinking we're in crisis and thinking it's different for us than the rest of the world. When we get into community with other parents and we realize, oh, that happened there too. That's when people read my book, it's like, oh my gosh, it sounds so familiar. Well, yeah, because you're not alone, even though you think you are.
Yes.
And you're actually, most of you are not in crisis, even though you think you are.
Right?
Yeah.
Community is so powerful. And again, thank you for bringing up your book, because that theme came up over and over and over again for the readers. They were like, it's like she's in my head.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not, I'm not like, I usually say I'm good, but I don't read minds, right? Like I don't have to read your mind to know what's happening in your home, because it's happening in all of our homes. And there's this message that somehow we're different, but we're really not that different. We're just spread out. And there's a real important value, I think, in the work that you and I do in normalizing. That's why what I refer to that book as the typical book for kids who aren't so typical. Right? Typical parenting book for kids who aren't so typical. Because we need to know that our kids are typical. They're just typical in a different realm.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, absolutely. And so I guess, what do parents need to do differently then to empower their kids?
Sort of, I would say the number one thing probably is to quit taking it personally. And I say that sort of jokingly, but totally not, because it's really important. Maybe the two things: commit to calm and stop taking it personally. Right? Commit to calm is about really paying attention to supporting ourselves, taking care of ourselves, practicing self-care, not having conversations when people are upset or exploding, or them or us, like really committing to create a calm tone in the home, because calm will lead the day. It sets the pace for everything. And then we have to really accept that our kids aren't doing this to make us angry, to be disrespectful, to be annoying, to like, okay, maybe sometimes they're doing it to be annoying, but for the most part, right? They're not doing this. It's got nothing to do with us. And when we make it about us, it prevents us from actually being present over there to take care of them. Because, you know, it's not that your kid's not listening, right? It's that your kid's having a hard time listening. Yep. That's a very different a different frame of reference.
That really is. So would you say, I mean, given that this talk is about taming the triggers, are you saying that it really boils down to parents being mindful about setting that tone, changing the dynamic by sort of reframing how they're thinking when they approach these triggering situations?
Yeah, mindset matters a lot.
Yeah.
A whole lot like that. I think if I had to boil down the work that Diane and I have been doing for the last 11 years, it's mindset matters. How we think about a situation is going to influence how we behave, and therefore will influence the outcome. So if we think they can or they can't, we'll be right. Right. And so if we go into it, I often say the 3 words that can change your life as a parent. Those 3 words are up until now. Up until now, you can't do anything about anything that's happened. Up until now, it's done. It's in the past. There's no changing it. There's no correcting it. There's no, yeah, you can learn from it, but there's nothing else you can do to shift it. From here forward, you have the capacity to see it differently and respond differently and lead to different outcomes. So if we are reactive and angry and annoyed and irritated, we're going to behave a certain way. And if we're compassionate and calm and understanding and sympathetic, we're going to respond in a different way. And that response will allow us to teach our kids and guide our kids to learn to self-manage and self-regulate instead of just being irritated and angry that they're not.
Yeah, I love that. It's beautiful. I mean, up until now is a great.
It's really simple.
Yeah, it's really simple to keep in mind. You know, I wonder though, does that also apply to those families who, you know, I've heard often from older kids, parents, you know, when they use bad language, they're cursing. I mean, it's really hard in the moment to not take that personally. Does this work there too? Do they need to do other things?
Well, yeah, there's more.
Yes.
And yes, it works there. I have done a huge amount of work in the last couple of years personally in our company, but me personally, with parents of older teens and young adults. Probably during the pandemic, that's been my biggest group of parents that I support, because you've got all these kids who are coming back home or landing back in the house, and it's been complicated.
Yep.
And what I work on with those parents more than anything is conversation tools and techniques and language patterns, and how do you shift the tone and so we do a lot of work with them around triggers and a lot of work with them around communication patterns, because oftentimes they've gotten to a point of friction where they're just in this habit of bouncing off each other in not constructive ways. And so I'll often say, you know, it took you 18 years to get to this point. It's going to take you a little time to shift it. And you have to undo some habits and build new ones. So it does work. And I don't want to say it's enough to just say up until now. It's not. There's a lot of tools and techniques that we teach. I'm sure there's a lot that you teach. We teach specifically tools from the world of professional coaching. So we're actually giving parents coaching skills and saying, try this. This is a tool that's designed for empowerment and to help people reach their potential.
Yeah.
And so there is some work to be done in it. There's some conscious, intentional change that we have to do. And that starts with shifting our mindset. Often, one of the things you've read about in the book, we talk about it, is to ask ourselves the question, is it naughty or neurological?
Yes.
Right? It's
That's a great,
huge. It's a huge framework. It's really simple, but that's a mindset shift. If I see them as naughty or bad or rude or whatever, right, or hateful, I'm going to respond differently than if I see them as really having a hard time being respectful right now.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's related to their ADHD, their emotion dysregulation, all of those different things that we know that is brain-based, right? I mean,
Exactly. And so we talk about, there's a tool we teach about the 4 phases of parenting, about knowing when and how to engage with your kid for empowerment and to begin to transfer agency to them, which is really what it's about. We talk a lot about asking permission. I think if I had to say one simple tool for parents of older kids to begin to shift, it's about asking for permission, not assuming it's okay to just take that teaching point and teach them something, right? At 17 years old, they may not be ready to hear it, but to say, I have an idea. Would you like to hear it?
Yep.
I have a thought about that. Can I share it with you?
Yeah.
Just that begins to transfer agency to our kids. And that's really what we need to be doing most of all.
Yeah. But I mean, I just remember when I was reading that book, a year ago, all those and I know that, this conversation, it's very, very superficial, we're just
Yeah,
starting
scratching
there.
the surface.
Yes. But just, even that, if you can just take that away and learn to just try that new skill. And instead of just saying, this is what you got to do, and acknowledging their own behavior, their own thoughts and things, and then trying to engage with them on a different level to collaborate.
Right,
It can,
exactly. I was talking to a mom this weekend who I used to know when my kids were little,
yes.
and I ran into her at an event, and I respect her very much. She's been a great mom, and she's got young adults now. And she was talking about one of her kids and saying, I just had to tell him he needed to go practice his mindfulness and he needed to go do. And I'm sitting here listening and biting my tongue because, of course, I'm not going to say anything, but I'm thinking, yeah, how effective is that going to be with a 23-year-old kid? It's not. Now, if she shifted it to say, have you tried using your mindfulness techniques? Have you thought about what might be helpful for you? If she asked some questions to collaborate with him, to put the agenda back on his plate to feel better and manage his anxiety, she would have much more effective results. And it's a really simple shift. You just have to think to do it. You have to know to do it and think to do it.
Right. Right. And I guess one last question, because we were talking about the triggers, taming the triggers. What would you say to parents as they're sort of, listening to this and thinking, okay, I understand that, I have to work on, my own reaction to things. What words of advice do you have for families who are like, okay, maybe I'm not even sure what my triggers are. Like, you can name
Yes.
some, but
Yeah.
like how do you go about helping your clients uncover what those triggers are?
So there are a lot of strategies, but my favorite, simplest one is to keep a trigger journal, literally for like 3 days, and write down every time somebody gets triggered. And I don't care if it's you or the kid or the spouse or the dog or, like just write down, just notice, because you think we all think we know, but you begin to see patterns when you capture anytime anybody gets aggravated. And we teach a framework called the anatomy of a trigger in Sanity School and in our group coaching. And in that, there are kind of 3 levels. So we talk about, most of us are in aware. Most of the time we kind of walk around in a sense of awareness. Then when something happens, we kind of move to alert when we're starting to get triggered. And if we don't recognize the trigger and manage it and bring it back down to aware, we're going to go into alarm.
Yep.
But there's the period of alert, right? If we can begin to pay attention to that middle ground when we're starting to get triggered and notice what's got me pulling my hair or rubbing my forehead or, gripping my fists or whatever, notice what your physical tells are. When you start to get triggered, that's one of my favorites, because we all have these physical signs, that twitching eye, whatever it is. So notice your physical signs and begin to pay attention to what's happening, what's precipitating it, what's happening before it. Is it that you're hungry? Is it that you're worried? Is it like, what were the feelings? What are the thoughts? And we can begin to really, really dampen down our triggers significantly just by becoming aware of when we're hitting that alert stage, because that will keep us significantly more from going up into alarm.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
really powerful.
Yeah. So you recommend for at least 3 days and then
At least
reviewing
3
kind
days.
of
Yeah.
what's happening there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody, and you don't want to be like, oh, I'm writing you in your trigger journal. It's not like a catching them.
Yeah.
This is about noticing. And
Mm-hmm.
then the other piece there is to commit when anyone is even slightly triggered is not to have a conversation.
During that period.
Stop.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that person's not in a place of problem solving. They're not in the problem solving part of the brain. Their brain is starting to get hijacked by the primitive brain, and we need to stop and calm it down. We call it reclaim the brain, so that we can get back into problem solving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My husband's doing a lot of work. My husband's got a lot of trigger issues, and he's been working really hard to manage it. And he's now at a place where he's ready to say, I don't want to stop every single conversation. I want to notice when I'm doing it and calm myself down in the moment so that I can continue the conversation.
Yeah.
And I really honor that. And it's taken years to get to this point.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yep. It's hard. It really is. But thank you for that, because I think, when people sort of get to that stage, sometimes they're already triggered.
Yeah. I mean,
So
some people go from aware
like,
to alarm.
Yep. Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
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 But if you can begin to notice when it's starting to go up, it's really amazing how you can begin to bring it back down
Mm-hmm.
and commit to calm. I mean, you have to commit to, I'm going to do what it takes to calm down, be calm, stay calm, create calm, invite calm, welcome calm, allow calm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It all begins with that awareness and that mindfulness. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so thank you, Elaine. I mean, so if people are watching this and they're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I need to get those books. I need to talk with her. I mean, how do they find you?
Thank you. I
Yes.
appreciate it. And this has been great. So I think for the purpose of this talk, what we've got is a free gift for people who, if they want to download a parent guide on minimizing meltdowns, they can go to impactparents.com/triggers.
Okay.
Funny enough. And that's a great introduction to kind of our work and our philosophy. There's all kinds of stuff on the website, impactparents.com. But if you start with impactparents.com/triggers, that'll give you a good kind of welcome introduction to the coach approach and the kinds of work that we do.
Mm-hmm.
And we are happy to support people in a million different ways. And whether it's virtually or in groups or training or coaching, whatever it is, I think it's a pretty robust resource. The website and the blog is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So we really invite people to check us out and see how we can help, and ask for the help you need. That's the other thing I would say.
Yes.
Is don't wait. So many parents sit back and it's like, well, like ask for the help. The worst thing that can happen is someone says no.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you don't ask, you're not going to get what you want. We have a scholarship program. People only can have a scholarship if they ask for it. We don't offer it. We don't advertise it. People have to ask for help, and then we'll give it to them.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. I mean, I think it's also just kind of maybe the stigma around needing to ask for help too, right?
Yeah, and it's the most important skill we can teach our kids. It's the most valuable lifetime skill anybody can learn is to ask for and accept help. Yeah. Period.
That is true.
We start with parents.
True. That's right. Well, so you heard it there. Please go to that website, impactparents.com/triggers. I know that Elaine's books are phenomenal. They are a great resource, and they do wonderful. They have webinars. Sign up for their newsletter. You'll get so much value just getting their newsletter. So please subscribe today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you for having me, Nerissa. It's great to be back.
Of course. So I will just tell you guys that my next week's guest is Lisa Woodruff from Organize 365. We're going to be talking about creating and organizing a mental script. So she's going to come next week. So please make sure to check that out. And then for those of you who are doing the book club, It's halfway through. Gosh, it's February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day. We are reading my friend, Dr. Damon Korb, developmental pediatrician, author of Raising an Organized Child. He's going to be doing a Facebook Live event with me the last Sunday of the month. So please, you still have time to pick that book up and read it. And then, like I said, if you have any other guests or topics that you'd like to have on the show, please make sure to just reach out. As Elaine said, it's as easy as asking, right? So
Right.
email me at drnerissa@letstalkkidshealth.org, or just on any of my social media platforms. Just send me a private message and we'll talk to you then. Well, Elaine, thank you again so much. It was such a pleasure to reconnect with you today. I really appreciate you taking the time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you. Bye. We'll see you next week.